And of course, as always, we'll give everyone a few moments to file in. Make sure all my streams are nice and sanitized so I don't dox myself. You know, proper professional things. Modern camera is in a working state. It's just not on the Thunderstore yet. Unfortunately, I've since lost the link, so... Again, not something to be fumbling around with this close to presentation time. Thank you very much, Tony. That is indeed the thing with the thing. Now, in relation to castle building, the camera mod is useful. It lets you see, things from a distance, but it's also important to remember that you don't design your castles with the mod in mind. Things look wonky from a first-person perspective. Sometimes clipping is an issue, and you need to be all-inclusive, essentially, with your castle designs. It's nice that, you can see the details of a third-story window from the ground, but where's that energy really helping you out, right? So it's a big reason why those like Hollywood West Trend facades are like just the view from the street, because that's all people ever really see. However, as we'll discuss later in the workshop here, I'll be spending a good bit of time talking about rooftops and how your castle looks from the sky, because a lot of people don't think about that sort of thing. And yeah, you may have a beautiful, well-designed interior, but for all intents and purposes, you live in a cinder block. And so a bit of the grandeur gets lost when someone is flying by. It's like, the King Regent of Frankelberg is living in a brick. Everyone point and laugh. Ah! But with this, we will show you what to look for, what to expect, and some advice on how to avoid living in a brick. And I think with that, we are ready to begin. All right. Can everyone see the stream nice and easy? Excellent. All right then, without further ado. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Builder's Workshop. I am Miyaru, perhaps better known as Fenwyck the Architect. I've been playing VRising for about 2 years now, with over 3,000 hours sunk into this goofy game. I have seen many fantastic and unique designs in my time, and I try to take a little something of each of them with me as I go to improve the next project. Over time, I grew to love the castle building, as it had seemed to be a curious niche that was missing in the community way back when. We had artists, we had PvP experts, and we had story writers and musicians, but what we didn't have were builders. Now, castles in V-Rising is our greatest means of self-expression, and making sure that those expressions is a reflection of the owner is something that cannot be understated. They stand dominant over our chosen territory, as they are the first thing that we raise up, and they are the last piece of ourselves to remain after we depart. Hopefully, by the end of this workshop, you will all be a little better equipped to raise castles better than before. Now, this will be a relatively short workshop, but I hope it is an informative one. There are 4 areas I want to cover. Those being having a plan beforehand, knowing how to temper that plan within the confines of the game we play in, and how to keep that plan flexible in the face of adversity. Lastly, I also have a handful of useful techniques that I've picked up that might add a little more spice to your design. Afterwards, we'll wrap up with some questions and answers. Now, like any big project, it can be intimidating to find where you begin. But experience has taught me that sometimes starting over is harder than starting up. So let me help you with both aspects. First of all, you should be sketching out your design. The tile system of our building can be enormously helpful in this regard, as it simplifies measuring out distances and scaling. Now, there are 2 websites that I like to use to plot out my projects, and that I will link here in the chat now. There we are. The first is a grid sheet of every single territory in the game, and it even marks out the differences in the floor heights to allow for pinpoint mapping of a design. It's fantastic stuff. Sure is a thing. Now, I love it and I use it often, and I just copy the maps over into any art program. Even MS Paint will work. And from there, I draw the designs I have in mind over top of the grid. Now, the second website is CAD Drift, which, alongside having very useful series of guides, is also enormously detailed in the stat breakdown of all the territories at a glance, as well as some step by step requirements of various buildings and how to unlock them. Now, while you're designing your blueprint, it is important. Okay, not a question. While you're designing your blueprint, it's important to ask yourself some critical questions and set the expectations. Is this going to be a public works building? If so, what areas are going to be open to the public? Can people get stuck somewhere if they accidentally jump down from some stairs at a weird angle? Am I going to be needing industrial scale resource processing? Can I afford to give everyone in my sigil a 3 by 3 bedroom? What would I have to give up in exchange for that? Does the castle want to have guest rooms? Can the guests leave easily if no one else is online? Even the simple questions are important, like what's the color scheme going to be? Can we pick maybe two or three main colors, perhaps an accent color? Can we perhaps, keep things a little streamlined in that regard so that there is a coherency to the design? Asking yourself these sorts of questions during the pre design portion of a build will help clarify things in your mind before you start to lay down the foundations. Another important detail to ask yourself is how accessible do you want to be? And for the most part, that's what makes Farbane and Dunley so hotly contested. Between either being centralized on the world map and having all the cave networks lead back to Farbane, those two regions are usually the hotbed for public works like taverns and arenas. Now, this isn't to say that you won't find success running your business out of the Hollowed Mountains, but you might find it difficult to attract customers from further abroad if people weren't heading in your direction for other reasons, like farming for resources. A common problem a lot of people run into is that their homes lack any kind of future proofing. And that is to say, when they were living out of wooden boxes with palisade walls, they had a furnace in the grass that was over there. And 4 weeks later, they have a full forge room in the same spot for no other reason than they had wrapped that first furnace in walls and it just grew from there. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with doing things like that, but it does come with risks. If anyone has ever played Factorio, they will be intimately familiar with not leaving yourself enough room to grow, a concept I like to call FMS. Because when you've put down all your tiles, built your nice little castle with its symmetrical staircases, and the hallways are decorated, and then you unlock, let's say, for example, the advanced sawmill. It's wider than you were expecting, and it won't fit at all in the old wood shop. But to expand it means cutting into the dining hall. It's that or moving the stairs. You, my friend, have run into FMS. That sinking feeling when you build yourself into a corner and you can only mutter, ah, fuck me, no space. Familiarize yourself with the new buildings of Oakvale. Some of them are quite big. Decide if you will need or even want them. Maybe you'll want more than one. Whatever you decide, make sure you measure twice and cut once. Otherwise, you'll be having to awkwardly set up a temporary staircase that overhangs your garden so that you can then shuffle your interior around and make room. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk practicality versus aesthetics, the needs versus the wants. Because while we are all here to roleplay, we are still doing it within a video game. And that, let's be honest, wasn't designed with role playing in mind at the beginning. Now, in order to squeeze the most variety out of this game and to get the most amount of raw stuff for us to play with, the server is on the brutal setting. Now, while we have dialed some of the numbers back from the full difficulty, it is still a harder game. And that means if you're going to exist in this world, you're going to need to engage with those mechanics, either to overcome them or to survive while avoiding them. All that is to say, you're going to want to make sure that you have an alchemy lab, regardless of who your character is. The buffs and the healing potions will make or break brutal mode for a lot of players. Horses? They just suck now. There's no reason to touch a dozen horses looking for good stats because they're all bad. And they rely on using the stables now to increase those stats. So while building your dream castle, remember to include some facilities that will make you, the player, have a good time here in Vardoran. Now, if you're adamant about not using a certain aspect of the game for your story, or any reason at all, it's all the more power to you, but be prepared for the cost you incur to yourself for not fully engaging with the system. Sometimes you're going to have to give up what you want for what you'll need. Now, another important and related detail is your workflow. Remember to arrange your castle in a way that makes sense. The new treasury room simplifies a lot of this, but it is important to remember to organize your rooms so that they flow well with one another, i.e., making sure that your alchemy room has easy access to your garden, either directly or through your treasury, and by extension, that the treasury has easy access to the garden. You'll be spending a lot of time in your castle, so make sure that things are arranged efficiently to avoid unnecessary running around. Carpets and garden paths are useful in this regard. They actually give you a small movement bonus, so when you walk on them and over the course of a season, that extra speed really adds up. To summarize, think about what resources a room needs and how you can make your life easier organizing your castle accordingly. Here's a little hint: the blood mixer doesn't have a floor bonus associated with it, so you can stick it directly in your prison rather than putting it in the alchemy room. Now, remember that Vrising can be beaten in the course of a day or two. To stretch this out into a more interesting narrative, we also space out the progression unlocks, giving stories a chance to percolate and develop. But this can also mean having to learn to deal with not having everything. Scourgestone Brazers are one of my favorite lights. They're pretty badass. And I agree, you may find yourself having to use a Mist Brazier as a stand in for your spooky lights until you get that unlock. It's important to be flexible and be creative. Players are often more than happy to extend some imagination for the sake of a story. Another important detail I want to share is the fact that we are role playing in a game that was not originally designed for role play, but that also works in our favor. Here, there are very strict rules on how one engages in certain things. You'll never have to worry about having your heart keyed, for instance. You can take that beautiful bit of architecture and put it in your front lawn. Make it a centerpiece in your meeting room, perhaps. Or maybe a focal point and the center of your arena to act as an obstacle. You have rules to protect yourselves, and that can be leveraged for certain freedoms in your design. Perhaps your territory has multiple entrances. It really is as simple as designating a specific entrance that you want attackers to come through in a warbat. Wall off that weird side staircase. It doesn't exist. It's not real, and it can't hurt you. Build your castle so that it reflects your idealized vision, not one that is optimized for this game's abysmal siege metas. With all that in mind, don't let yourself get caught up in the minutiae, the small details. Work with what you have and finish what you can. Don't worry about what you don't have and what you can't do. It's okay to work in the broad strokes and then fine tune the design as you work through it, using an increasingly fine toothed comb. Many territories are lopsided, and sometimes you're going to have to get creative to make the most out of an awkwardly shaped territory. The worst you can do is give up, because despite the limited tools we have at our disposal, the depth and breadth of our creative potential has kept me interested in building in this game for 3,000 hours. And if you're just starting your own building journey, that should sound incredibly promising. Now then, let's talk some examples. Hello, everyone. It's me, Funny Fenny Builderman. Let's get this set up, and then we can begin with the examples. All right. So, this is where I really wanted to have modern camera for the direct up and down view. So, here's an example of just a early game forge room. Probably looks something like this. Real basic, contained, all the necessities. As you grow, it's going to look something like this, maybe. And that's kind of the footprint that you're looking at. As you develop and as you expand, there we go. It's going to look something a little more like this. And you can get some pretty creative use out of the spaces you'll need. The anvil has a L-shaped footprint, so you can kind of squeeze things in between, and you can get some pretty compact designs. Because again, you might not be a blacksmith by trade, your character, but you still need to produce your weapons and what have you. So, some bare minimalist designs will be able to be kind of tucked away, squirreled away, so you can engage with the game, but not have it impact or take up a big footprint in your castle overall. Generally speaking, the forge is going to be your single biggest room. And you're going to want probably multiple furnaces, fabricator, like all the necessities. Here you can see that I have some footpaths put down to make things a little bit quicker, a little bit faster, and easier to move around. Now I like to use garden paths in the forge room because it makes a little more sense than having, say, carpet run through it. But that's just my personal preference. You can do however you want. Over here, we have some different workshop designs. The early game workshops are all going to be able to fit in a 2x2 space. We'll cover garden path techniques in a moment. Don't worry. I'll tell you how to tightly tile them. So in a 2x2 space, you can have 2 sawmills, 2 grinders. Maybe you want 1 grinder, 2 sawmills, and the name is right there, woodworking bench, right? Maybe you don't want that. Maybe you want 1 sawmill, 2 grinders, and a woodworking bench. Like all of these different needs, you can balance them out and fit them in a 2x2 space. It's important to remember that you can like step in and on these things. So even in something like this, where like, oh, I can't get in there, well, you can walk through here to get at that. And here's kind of the rub, right? You'll be having this for most of the game. It'll fit neatly in your 2x2, and you're happy with it. You get a little bit further in the game. Now you have an advanced sawmill. An advanced sawmill can only fit in a 2x2 space. So you're going to need to expand. Now here, you'll be hard pressed to want more than this, but a 2x3 space, you can fit all the amenities. Like 2 grinders, advanced sawmill, woodworking bench, devour. What more could you want? So keep in mind of some basic dimensions, and you can help future-proof your design so that you're not having to, say, move these stairs over. Let's look at some more workshop designs. Vermin nests are notoriously chunky things, and generally speaking, they're going to be taking up a 2x2 for just one. But they're a little bit smaller, and so if you extend that to 3, you can fit a second, or even all 4 in a 3x3. Usually you'll want them isolated just because having rats spill out while you're trying to make potions is ideal. And then, have a nice garden up here, harvest, come down, immediately start crafting. Now here's some compact tailoring designs. Oh yeah, vermin nests, I cannot understate them. They are so convenient. It takes a little bit of an iron and glass investment, but it outpaces harvesting mutant grease and silkworms out in the wild. You get a good vermin nest setup going, and you can just reap those rewards ad nauseum in your own home. But yeah, you can get the looms going here. Tailing bench fits very neatly in technically in a 2x2 space, but generally speaking, you can wedge it in a 1x2. You just can't get a wall there. Here's a nice little compact alchemy design for you. 2x2 for the vermin nest with some additional materials here. And then we leverage the weird shape of the alchemy table to fit here, where the rats and the spiders won't aggro towards you. And you can just harvest your chosen crop, pop it in, boom, get your crafting in. Just a neat little compact, highly compact design. Everything you need in a small space. Now, the new stables are weirdly shaped. They won't fit in a 1x1, but they will fit in a 2x2 or a 3x3. And then you can have like a little walkway in between. But just something to keep in mind, you need at least 2 spaces if you want to have multiple stables. Like this is perhaps my favorite arrangement for multiple. Kind of tile and a half, but like Not quite because of the 2x2. It's a little wacky, a little wonky. Yeah. Oh, missed. So, a jewel crafting room. Everything you need can fit in a 2x2. Make your amulets, make your jewels, make your gems, craft your decraft your terrible gems. But maybe you're a rift fiend and you want multiple grinders. So you might find a room a little bit more spaced out like this. But again, comes down to personal preferences and what your own needs are. Here's a highly compact end game tailoring room. Kind of looks like trash, but it's everything you'll need. But most people's tailoring rooms are going to look something more like this. Bit more relaxed, bit more spaced out, but not taking up a huge amount of room. Now, another important detail to remember is that libraries, the only thing that they care about is the paper press. You can have your research tables literally anywhere. This is the only thing that matters to have the flooring, so it doesn't really need to be in your library. Personally, I like to have it near the summoning circle. Why? Well, a lot of the endgame recipes require the schematics and scrolls. So, something to consider. And in the example home I have built later on, you'll find that I actually have these nowhere near where the research happens and are in fact tucked next to the wood shop because, sawdust. Now, do we want to look at the example home next, or do we want to get right into the tips and tricks? All right, example home it is. Wall, you displease me.
There's been a breach at my castle.
All right. So, here we have a castle that's going to be for a standard clan size of 4 people. This is going to be someone who has a scholarly pursuit, and so they put emphasis on their research. But one of the members also likes doing gardens, so they want a nice sprawling garden. They're not big on farming, just kind of what they need to get by. With that in mind, let's take a look at this example. Yeah. No grass, because they're not a fan of the gloomrot, of the gloomrot dead. But where they do want grass, they try and at least make it match the environment. So in the stables, we have the gray grass option. 2 stables tucked away. Teleporter to get quickly back inside. And otherwise, everything is neatly organized into the groups. We got the grate. We got the new corrupted flowers. And hey, no, tell me that doesn't look nice, huh? That looks sick. A lot of people keep their castle art tucked away in the back corner where it does no one no good. That looks awesome. And you know what? A little thing we can do to really make it pop we just give it a little, actually, give dust grave. Yeah. Yeah, give it a little bit of that interior glow. Now you got the light catching the inside of the spokes. The blood orb itself is lit up. Really makes it pop out a bit more. You know, they broke with the original design a little bit because they were finding they needed just a little bit more blood rose for their needs. So they expanded the blood rose section. They got lucky with some trippy spores and they want to corner the market. So they keep those babies locked up tight. But somewhere where everyone else can appreciate them, maybe like, God damn, I want some of that. Over here, sawmill, paper press to process sawdust. I will be giving a quick demonstration on the new redistribution engine, but that comes later. And then up here, we have the grinder and a teleporter for easy back and forth. And over here, oh hey, a very convenient alchemy lab. Just kind of tucked right there next to the flowers. Important to remember, this uses alchemy flooring. So they have all of their grinding done in this room. It's like, well, what if I want to fight a blood soul? They're kind of big. Well, you just lure it off to the side into an adjacent room. All you care about is getting that discount. So that's the side entrance. How does it look like for a main entrance? Well, that's pretty cool, right? And using the stables. So now we have the wood shop, the alchemy, and the jewel crafting not taking up any room in the main castle itself. All of that can just sit pretty. Now, a big thing I wrestled with for a long time were these little cones that sat on top of the railings. They're a part of pillars, part of architecture. And it wasn't until I discovered that palisade pillars turn off the cone at the top. And so you can have nice smooth railings if you just kind of put the palisade pillar in place. Doesn't compromise the integrity of the wall because all that matters for your health is the middle bit. So now we have this. Our people are kind of going for a fountain of knowledge sort of style. So they have all the researchables here. They've gone with vaulted ceiling. So you get the, high stretching books going upwards. Pillars that are being used as kind of like hanging lights. And it can be a little awkward finding where to stuff your servants, but good a spot as any. Maybe they use the blood as ink. Maybe that could be the excuse. But here we have, this is the first thing people see when they enter. This is what this clan wants to emphasize. This is what they want to show off. But, in a pinch, it's also kind of good in a siege. The servants are right there. It's a choke point. And if people come through the bottom, well, the vermin nests are right there. This is just out of the way, and that's just very like compact, convenient, and you don't have to really think about it. They also have a little basement arena. You know, if you just want to spar, if you want to practice. A little bit mirrored, so it's not just a box. You have some cover you can duck behind. Just something nice and basic. And then there's a little exterior staircase. I'm personally a big fan of exterior staircases, so a lot of times I won't wall them in just because I think it looks nice. So you come in, you enter. A dining hall. Wonderful. Distribution engines also make great decoration. Some people like to put them next to the workshop item that they're enhancing. Doesn't work that way. Doesn't matter. You can put them anywhere. It's just kind of adding to the total number of connections a particular castle can have. Little living wine cellar for the guests. So you can have your meetings, you can have your what have yous in here. A central teleporter hub. Just gonna, and I'm on my horse and I'm gone, right? Real easy, real simple. I come home, I get in, drop off my stuff, get that processing to my treasury room and back, get some extra potions brewing. Boom, just like that. There's talk about changing how stairs work, but right now they remain as they have been. Another exterior wall, kind of making use of some roof shapes here. Now, I'm a big fan of these slopes that come up against a wall here. And in order to get that, the space underneath needs to be enclosed. So, you know, I'm going to make use of that space. I'm not using it for anything, so I'm just going to fill it with extra connection points. Makes for a nice slope. Little spot to overlook the library. Yell at guests to go away. Always important. If you're deleting walls without stairs, that's because the walls are supported elsewhere. As you can see here, they're still very needed. Dismantle blocked. So we'll cover that when we get to tips and tricks. And again, this is a 4-man sigil. They got what they want, but they've had to sacrifice in other ways. So everyone gets a 1x2. They can decorate it how they want, but that's your assigned seating. And you know, we get more of those nice slopes, so we don't have sheer castle walls that give us this typical cinder block look. And you know what? It's a good excuse for dealing with a throne's height. Because if you do that, you can kind of match it, get the extra nice little exterior look. Once again, exterior staircase, but you'll notice I've added some supports to make it look less silly. Because sometimes people have overhangs that just don't make sense. And I like to have it like visually represented, like, yeah, it's being supported. So like this overhang here has a support. It's like, ah, buddy yaru. There's no tile here. How did you do that? Castle, foundation, exterior flooring, invisible foundation. This lets you have natural looking ground without being awkward grass. So you can put your walls down. Very useful. It's the same as this, but for the ground. Now to continue the tour, we come up. Yeah, very modest, what you would expect to see. All the amenities. Forge room, getting a little bit fancy with the scourge stone braziers, but you know, everything's here. They've done away with the tier 1 and tier 2 crafting, but you know, some people like to have that. Just heck, I could even just tuck that in here. Doesn't hurt anyone, doesn't take up any space, doesn't block any pathing. Looks nice. Done. Easy. Then we go up again, another exterior staircase. Then we get to the treasury room. From here, all your crafting can just be quickly and easily accessed. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to do anything. It's just here. And then if you're feeling particularly opulent, you can, you know, have a little sky chamber. Again, supported. So in a way that makes sense. And I've used invisible foundations to allow me to put those pillars there. So that, you know, if you have something particularly special you want to keep squirreled away, you can. Oh, also, every floor has a fast track to the arena. Now, let's quickly do an overview of the distribution engine, and then we'll move on. So the distribution engine is a beautiful thing. It enables these extra buttons here so that anything that goes into the output then gets delivered to the location. The new invisible foundation only works on the ground level. Yeah. About that. Patched out. No longer can we have nice things. So before, it would look something like this.
I cannot build here.
Okay. So before, you would have something like this. Garden path. do like that. And then you would...
I cannot build here. This will
So yeah.
not work.
No longer can you do floating garden paths. We can still do it with mods, but unfortunately it's now out of the reach of the average player. In addition, you can no longer put trees under fountains or statues. So that has also been patched out. You can put things under other objects. Small plants still work, but you can't do big trees anymore. I'm sorry, I'm heartbroken about it too. That's just how it be sometimes. Oh yeah, no. I rioted in the beta. Nope. Nope. Let us keep it. Nope. Yeah, no. We team effort, like. And here's the crazy thing. There's no patch notes for the tree thing or the floating walkways. It just silently patched out. It's crazy. Anyway. So to work, click on the distribution engine, add connection. And now you're given a little pipe and you have to physically run with it to where you want it to go. So yeah, I've connected it to here. Does it make sense? No, but you do you. So now, when because here's the thing, toggle auto send, right? So now, anytime that this creates something, instead of appearing here, it will automatically appear in the input of the other thing. I can also just manually send things with the quick send button. Boop. And now it's over here. You can use this for so many different things than just crafting. You can have patron donated item drops into an arena. You could have a secret messaging system across your castle. You could have a bar that delivers the drinks straight to the table. The distribution engine system is crazy. I could have a chest right here by my entrance connected to another generic chest up in my treasury room and then just be like, whew, that was a big farming lesson I did. I need to boop, quick send all. Now it wouldn't be this, you would use something that can craft. So it'd be like, you know, that. But then I can take this inventory, quick send it to a generic chest upstairs, and then just like that's what it would look like, right? Boom. Boom. Well, I would do it in stages so the connection is right, but you get the idea. Now, one more detail before we move on to the tips and tricks. The distribution engine can also chain together. So I add connection to here, add connection to here, and then I'm like, hey, and look at that. It knows not to send the planks. Set it to auto. I am filtering out the sawdust to where it can go to here, where it will go to here, and now I am automagically going to be creating scrolls, because I only need to keep one open slot for the sawdust, and it will just get refilled every time the sawmill activates. And then I just add this connection, right? I put it into a chest here. I'm like, hey, I need those scrolls. Open the chest, grab the chest. And now my scrolls are automatically being delivered to the summoning circle. So you can get some real automation things going once you get fancy with it. Something to consider, something to consider. And that concludes the model home demonstration. Now we get to the fun bit, the tips and tricks. I have a lot of tips and tricks to share. So something that will be offered this season is clipping. Clipping is when you have something like this, and then be like, I want half an artisan table. Why? Doesn't matter. You wanted it. We can make that happen. This is what clipping is. I want a thing, and I want it here. You can also get fancy with it and have a vermin nest that will then output into a chamber. Hey there, little guy. Ain't that some shit? And of course, not aggroed out here. So if you can get creative with your clipping requests, you can get some pretty cool stuff going. Some other things I wanted to talk about are the differences in hallways. One tile hallways are pretty common, but they can also be kind of cramped. You give it just a little bit more breathing room and it really opens up. Huh? But maybe you have a workshop there, you have a workshop there, can't really make it work. You can expand it in other ways, and you can go up. Vaulted ceilings can really open up how spacious a place feels without affecting the footprint. You're going to give up some verticality, but sometimes that effect is worth it. And it only gets magnified in bigger spaces. But let's say you're kind of low on room, right? I need a few more tiles to finish a build. How do I eke out that extra few thing? Heart dredging. You go to your castle, build mode, you move it. Oh, hey, look at that. I went from 311 to 312. The walls are still there. The doors all still work. I don't actually have the bricks in now, but you get the point. Go here. Look at that. Look at all that space I'm reclaiming. 308.
I cannot build here.
306. No, you still have to respect where a castle heart can go. But you can stretch the heart much further by dredging your tiles on the ground floor. If you have a basement area, perfect. Keep in mind it does make it count as outside, but those are tiles you could put elsewhere in your castle. You can also put your plants inside of things. Vases and planters can have regular plants put on them, and the plant itself will just snap to the correct height. Harvestable too. It's not hard. I have a fountain. I grab the thing. I put it under the thing. It's just that shrimple. Yes, there are some restrictions, but generally speaking, pretty straightforward, pretty straightforward. Railings. Railings are kind of a big deal. They are what define the edges of terrain. Very famously can't attack over them, and they all look the same. However, if we apply invisible foundations, and then the fence that we want along the edge, well, hey, how about that? Still works the same, like mechanically identical, but now you have a visual difference that you can put. So again, just invisible foundation, fence along the edge, and now you have a new look.
I cannot build here.
Because very specifically, block by railing, block by railing. But you can put down foundation on it. I want to have a pillar floating over by the stairs. I want to make it look good. But it's kind of a pain to try and, decorate the far side. Click, drag, bring it towards me. Wallpaper. Make it look like that. I decorate it with bells, with a flag, and a light on the far side. Click, drag, and you're done. So they keep their decorations when you move them, and it really helps when otherwise you're kind of doing like one of these, and you're just like, can I, no, not high enough. Maybe if I. You're not kind of fiddling with the camera trying to get those angles. Speaking of angles, I'm sure everyone has seen this before, where you just kind of have defenders on a ledge like this. Railings also protect against attackers from here. This wall doesn't do anything. I can get rid of that. Doesn't matter. Railings will still block it. The sweet spot is just over the halfway point. And then blocked. So, something to keep in mind. Good for attacking from through there. Windows with hatches are great. And then take shelter again. The backs of stairs also exist for ground level, by the way. This doesn't do anything, but it is a fun little detail. I suppose you could be sneaky with a rat. All right, next trick. We did that. Oh, yes. Similar with how the railings from before, you can put them along invisible foundations. So you can create some interesting effects by cluttering up the above space. This room was originally going to showcase floating platforms, and then I discovered it was patched out. So, different trick. Now, again, smooth railings are very valuable. And if you're not a fan of the raw timbers, there's a number of things you can do to disguise it. Banners, greenery, statues, and objects. All manner of things. Some items have a kind of deceptive backing to them. Fireplaces in the backs of some staircases are quite famous for this. So you can see I'm melded into it. And you can create some interesting effects. Nothing elaborate, nothing fancy, but it's just something to keep in mind. Now, someone mentioned earlier tomb snatching. This is a subset of clipping and is something that I've found quite some time ago and is a favorite trick of mine. So we have just, a very unassuming looking hallway. I go forward and I'm up here. Because certain buildings have collision, they will grab you when you walk over them. This includes obviously tombstones. This includes vermin nests, teleporter pads, waygates. And it really is just that simple. It will grab a player from below, and if set to the correct height, will pull them up to the next floor. Obviously, it's only one way, but pretty cool, pretty classy. Considering that this one requires admin commands to implement, don't see a reason why they would get rid of this one. Speaking of an elevator, once upon a time, the Red Fang pirates commissioned Fenwyck the architect to rebuild their ship. And I gave them a crow's nest. And it kind of looked like this. Up, 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 up. How about that? And then I just go back down. Whoop, 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 whoop. And it's a little janky, but it is reliable enough that you can use it as an actual elevator. I'm very proud of that one. All right. Once more for fun. Whoop. Bueno. All right, let's talk roof shapes. Very often, you're going to get rooftops in Vrising that look like this. People have built their castle and they don't really think about how it looks to the outside observer. This is common, this is not unusual, and it's the kind of thing you see when a space gets to be more than 3 wide, right? So here you can see it's a 3x3 space, and it gets the square. Not a bad thing, but when it gets to be wider, it really kind of starts to show a lack of care and attention. So here in the model home, we have lots of slopes, lots of interesting shapes. And like, it's varied. It's different. It looks like a castle as opposed to this. And there are ways to shape your build, ways to make it look a little bit more interesting. And I missed. There we go. This is one of my favorite designs where you have slopes that continue up through. And it is as simple as having the space above be its own contained room. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that. This whole space could be one room and it just extends into the space, but it creates the cone rooftop there, shapes in, and you're good. You can have large domes with 2 wide gaps. And something you might want to avoid are having windows next to rooftops like this. The purpose of a roof is to slant away rain and snow and other weather, and you're just kind of dumping it into the window. So rather than having a window right there, you could have it maybe on the flat face, or maybe have the window here instead. Again, it's not that it's any less functional, but it does make the castle feel a little bit more real. Oh, that was just so I could fly. You're so true. We'll just cover that up real quick. Now, this one might be a little obvious, but you can also have just scaffolding. I need to decorate the far side of a build.
I cannot build here.
Ba, 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 ba. I apply my decorations. And then I clean up behind me. Useful for if you have vaulted ceilings and awkwardly placed distant walls, or you want to get a few fine details just right. Don't be afraid to just throw down random floors. Anyway, that concludes the tour. Now, if you excuse me, my planet needs me. Very true. Now, before we get to the questions and answering portion, I have just one last thing I want to tell you, and that's to rotate your damn plants. They look plastic, it looks stupid. Tessellation is the bane of gardens everywhere. It's as simple as just spamming rotate when you put down the seed, rotate your plants. This is what they look like unrotated. That's what they look like rotated. It looks natural, it looks wild. That's all. That's all I ask. Oh, by all means, you can have a reason for doing it. Just make sure that it is a conscious decision. I don't care if you do even straight rows, just be aware that it's an option and that you are making the choice to do it like that. All right. I now open up the floor to questions. You can type it out or you can raise your hand and I'll bring you up to speak. Yes. That's a good idea, actually, and I'll demonstrate some of the things here. Does anyone have any questions, though? So yeah, you get something like that. Get a little hanging light. Is it the tight one? No, you want the tight one. There. Yeah, a little bit different than what the light would be by itself. Or maybe we get some orange and then some red. A little bit more of a deeper hue. And of course, that's not even getting into clipping. Oh yeah, I forgot. They turned off my brazers during the night. Ah! But you get the point. It would be a big blue, and then it'd have a green overtone, etc. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Royal brazier behind statues is great. Gives a little bit more, flexes kind of the shape of it. And surprisingly bright, too. Mm-hmm. But yes, if there's no questions specifically for me, I'll leave the chat open for y'all to discuss and swap stories. But other than that, thank you very much for coming to the workshop, and I hope this has been informative. I look forward to seeing all the wonderful castles you'll be building in the upcoming season.